show the customer how to set up a SPRIworks run and just sort of go through some important points to mention while you're there. So the first thing I like to do when I'm at a customer site is just open up the instrument and show them the different racks that come out and what's where. So there's two different racks. There's the cartridge rack, this is where your reagent cartridges go, and there's the tip tube rack. This is where your tips and your tubes go and where your adapters are loaded, things like that. So these are the only two things that actually come out of the instrument. So I like to open up the instrument and show the customer where everything is. The magnet is here. There's two heating blocks, one here and one here, heating block 1, heating block 2. This is the pipette module here. Now the instrument only moves in two directions, Y direction and Z direction. The pipette module only moves up and down in the Z direction, and the stage only moves in the Y direction back and forth. Once you're ready to show the customer how to load samples, you first want to take out a cartridge. The cartridge takes about 45 minutes to thaw at room temperature. Alternatively, you can put it into a tip lid with some water, and it'll take about 5 or 10 minutes. These two wells here take the longest time to thaw. You can probably figure out why that is. A couple of these other wells are almost thawed immediately. So basically, if these two are thawed, you know your cartridge is completely thawed. Before loading the cartridge, you want to make sure that all of the reagents are at the bottom of the well. If they're not, if you see any air bubbles, you either want to tap it on the bench, or you can do a quick wrist flick, and this usually brings everything down to the bottom. Once you notice that there are no more gaps or no bubbles, then it's ready to load onto the reagent rack. When you're showing the customer how to load the cartridge, you want to make sure that the colored tab is always facing them. You slide the cartridge into the rack under the little ridge there, and you can feel it snap into place. It's almost impossible to load these upside down or this way. You have to almost force it in, so that's one thing you can mention. We get that question a lot. But if you load it correctly, it slides right in and snaps into place. Once the cartridge is loaded, you can put the cartridge rack into the instrument. Once you've loaded the cartridge rack, you then want to put in the tip tube rack. This always goes in second. Then you're ready to load your tips and tubes. It's important to make sure, obviously, that you put the tips and the tubes in the same column as you have your cartridge. The instrument has no idea where you've loaded anything, so unless you put these in the right place, it has no idea. So there's two different kinds of tips you're going to use when you load the tip tube rack. One is this piercing tip. All this does is pierce the foil at the beginning of the run. You need one piercing tip per cartridge. The piercing tip goes into row 1 of the tip tube rack. The second tip you're going to load is the 1 mil tip. Again, this comes out of the sheath. 2 1 mil tips are loaded for each library that is made. One goes into row 2, and one goes into row 3. You then need 3 2 mil tips per library. One is inserted into row 4, that's where your adapter will be loaded. One is put into row 5, that's where your final library will end up. And finally, 1 tube is loaded into the actual cartridge rack, into the cartridge. This is where your input DNA is located. Once you have everything loaded, you've got your adapter tube, your adapter, your final elution tube, your 2 1 mil tips, your piercing tip, your cartridge, and your input DNA tube. You're ready to go. At this point, you can close the door and insert the method card. You want to make sure before you turn the instrument on that you've inserted the method card, or else it won't work. The method card, this is actually one of the development cards, but if you had a card that came with the instrument, there's a nice arrow, and it's pretty easy to tell which way it's loaded. The arrow goes towards the instrument and faces you. You just push it all the way in, close the door, and then turn on the instrument. After loading the method card and turning on the instrument takes about 20 seconds to initialize. When it's done, you'll see this top menu is displayed. It says Start, Protocols, Manual, Tests, and Start. All you're going to do next is just hit this green Start key. The SPRIworks system you're using will be displayed on the menu here. It'll say either System 1, System 2, or System 3. Then after you hit Start, the first option you have will be to choose whether or not you want size selection. So this is a System 1 card. For System 1, you either get to choose 1 for yes, 2 for no. Most likely, most customers will be choosing 1. The next option is to choose which size selection. So you have 1 for 2 to 400 or 2 for 3 to 600. I'll go ahead and pick 2. The last option you have is to confirm your entry. Then want to hit the Enter key if this is what you wanted to do. Enter key is this backwards facing arrow. Once you hit the Enter key, the whole run will start. You'll then see the approximate time left displayed on the instrument. This is how you'll know how long the run will take.
Hi, Heather.
Chris, how are you?
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm from Beckman Coulter Genomics.
Great to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
What happens if I open the door during a run?
If you open the door during a run, the run will stop and you will lose your samples. Unfortunately, there is no method recovery.
If I pause the run, can I then open the door?
Yes, if you pause the run, you may open the door. Once you are ready to continue the run, simply press Start.
Can I use other tubes than the one provided in the SPRIworks kits?
We recommend only using the tubes that are provided in the SPRIworks kits. This is because the other tubes were not designed for use with the SPRI-TE instrument, and crashes could occur.
Do I have to run 10 samples every time?
No, you don't need to run 10 samples every time. You can run anywhere from 1 sample to 10 samples at a time.
If I load less than 10 samples, does it matter where I load them in the cartridge?
It doesn't matter where you put the cartridges on the instrument if you have less than 10. As long as you line up the reagent cartridge with the tubes and tips, you can choose any spot.
Can I put the cartridge in backwards?
No, you can't put the cartridge in backwards. There's only one way to put the reagent cartridge into the cartridge tray.
Is it important that I follow the recommended adapter volume on the IFU?
Yes, it's very important to follow the adapter volume listed on the IFU.
Does the input volume matter? And what is the maximum volume of input?
The input volume only matters in that it should be between 100 microliters and 400 microliters.
Is it possible to start a run and then leave it overnight?
Yes, you can start a run and leave it overnight. However, when you arrive the next morning, you'll find that your sample is evaporated. Simply resuspend your sample in the same elution volume, and you'll have comparable recoveries.
Should the instrument be plugged into a UPS?
Yes, we highly recommend that you plug your instrument into an uninterrupted power supply. In the event of a power outage, your run will not be aborted.
Do I need to purify my input DNA before loading on the instrument?
No, there's no need to purify your input DNA, as the first step in SPRIworks is a purification step. Keep in mind that the volume does need to be between 100 microliters and 400 microliters.
Does the instrument perform PCR?
No, PCR is not performed during the run. It is taken offline, following the SPRIworks run.
What volume is the output library?
The volume of the output library depends on the system you're using. For System 1, the volume is 30 microliters. For System 2, the volume is 50 microliters. And System 3, elution volume is 58 microliters.
How long is the run?
The length of the run depends on the system you're using. Our shortest run time is for System 3 with no size selection. It's just over 3 hours. Our longest run is System 1 with size selection, which is just over 5 hours. Well, thank you very much for watching. We certainly hope that this has helped you get a little bit more familiar with the SPRIworks system. If you have any questions from a customer, just feel free to contact tech support.